Welcome to the Stairway to Heaven. We're coming to you bringing insights into the ever-changing high-frequency currents now bathing the planet and their effect on us all. The source of vital information for the evolving human being. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Rites of Passage. My 16-year-old son was driving as he and I were on the way to Taekwondo class. Up ahead in the road was a little guy, no more than 6 or 7 years old, happily riding his shiny new bicycle. Suddenly, a beat-up, low-riding rice burner full of young men, probably in their late teens or early 20s, pulled up alongside of him and attempted to knock him off his bike with a long-handled car window scraper. The poor little guy almost lost control, but did manage to stay upright. The car full of bullies turned around and took another pass at the child. My son and I were livid. "They're going to hurt that poor kid," I exclaimed. "Not on my watch," my son responded. He accelerated, placing the car between the boy's bike and the bullies, effectively blocking their access to the child. He then pulled into a drive to turn around. The car full of young men pulled in behind to block us in, poured out of their car, and descended upon us. My son and I got out of our car to meet them. He was in the lead, and I stood slightly behind and to his side. I was far enough back to give him room, but close enough to cover him. We were in street clothes, not having changed to our Taekwondo uniforms, and I was wearing a long, full skirt. I settled into a subtle fighting stance under my skirt, leaving my hands loose and relaxed at my sides. Backed by his 4 cronies, one of the men puffed up and charged us, bellowing, "Where do you get off, nearly running us off the road?" "Where do you get off harassing that little kid? What's up with that?" my son countered, standing relaxed with his arms crossed over his chest. The bullies continued to approach, but my son and I calmly held our ground. Finally, the one in the lead seemed to get it that he was not having the desired effect. We looked to be a diminutive lady in a long skirt and a kid of 16, albeit a 6'5" one. But there were 5 of them, right? Where was our fear and panic? Why weren't we acting intimidated? My son was a first degree and I a second degree black belt at the time, but the bullies had no way of knowing that. "I would strongly recommend you and your friends get back in your car and leave while you still can," my son advised, without raising his voice or moving from his relaxed stance. Okay," the leader of the pack wisely responded while backing up towards their car. All 5 of them proceeded to do just that. After their hasty, ball tires spinning retreat, my son turned to me and asked, "Why'd you let me handle that?" I was a single mom, and I'd always done the protecting. "Because I had every faith you could, son." And that was his passage into manhood. He's been watching out for me ever since. Life passages are an interesting topic. One might think they're simply a natural progression as we age. But the fact is, if they're not recognized and honored, we may not pass completely through them, remaining stuck in old expressions. This prevents us from truly embracing the next role. Life passages need to be acknowledged not only by the person going through them, but their friends, family, and community in order to fully embrace them. It's hard to stand in adulthood if our entire family is in agreement that we'll never grow up and treats us accordingly. No wonder family order plays such a large part in our emotional makeup. The youngest child may get stuck at the bottom of the totem pole, always viewed as inferior and inept by older siblings, if they themselves can't advance into adulthood. Entire families get frozen in outmoded roles that manifest at family gatherings to the absolute horror of onlookers. During a life passage class, one of my students gave an eloquent example. "My wife always seemed to be a rational adult until she'd get around her family. Then she'd morph into a spoilt 2-year-old, throwing a tantrum. I swear, it was like I didn't even know her. Even our young children would ask what was wrong with their mother." His wife was the youngest of her siblings. Often the eldest child is thrust into premature adulthood by circumstances forcing them to parent younger siblings while still too young to take on the responsibility. As a result, this becomes their role and their assumed job in the family. We may get stuck in mothering or fathering and end up parenting our entire lives, even into our old age, long after our old children reach maturity. When we do not step out of parenting, our children have a difficult time stepping into adulthood. This circumstance produces self-centered, immature offspring that resent us for disempowering them, yet are unable to take responsibility for their own actions. Rites of passage are not restricted to passing into adulthood. There are many stages we go through. To demonstrate, let's work with the following archetypical examples, with the understanding that these are just a few of many. Child, maiden, warrior, seductress, satyr, mother, father, wise woman, master craftsman, and crone wizard. Each archetype has its own role within the manifestation process, but that's a topic we'll go into more deeply in following Stairway to Heaven episodes. As we pass from one archetypal expression for the first time, it's helpful to have a rite of passage ceremony to mark the occasion of leaving one main expression and taking on another. For instance, leaving childhood for young adulthood is characterized by moving into maiden warrior, where young people start to express traits of the gender, the maiden being one of trust and purity, and warrior of protection and gallantry. As we move into the dating stage, we enter into seductress satyr. Seductress attracts while satyr pursues. The next passage, when we marry and have offspring, we enter mother-father, where mother nurtures and father guides. When our offspring become adults themselves, we're free to embrace our mastery and become mentors as wise woman and master craftsman. Our elder years are characterized by crone and wizard, who recognize the power and necessity of tearing things down to their constituent parts in order to free up energy to conjure anew. Only the wisdom of adulthood and elderhood and having many life cycles gives us the knowledge and insight to accomplish this well. While passing from one stage of main expression needs to be completed and celebrated, we still need access to all the others to function efficiently. When working as a team to accomplish something, we may take on different roles dependent upon our areas of expertise and necessity. Though in my personal life, I may have passed into wise woman master craftsman, I may drop back into mother-father to nurture and support a project, while someone with more knowledge of the skills needed will serve as wise woman master craftsman. In addition, each of us has and utilizes access to the expression of both genders. As a single mother, I provided my children with what they needed by expressing both the nurturance of mother and the guidance of father. Once my son went through his rite of passage into young adulthood, I took on the mentorship and advisory role of wise woman master craftsman. This allowed my children the opportunity to seek my advice without having to fight me for their independence. If, however, we've not consciously passed from one archetype to another, we remain overly identified with the existing role, refusing to take on another, and may fight someone with much more qualified for the position. While at any given time we have an overlording expression, choosing the proper archetypical role for the situation is also very important. Reference the earlier story of the mother that reverted to a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum, when the role of mother would have been a much better choice, leaving one of her children to pitch the fit. It's wise to choose our expression while taking into consideration what our major role or responsibility may be at the time. If I have small children at home, I may put traveling and totally immersing myself in my career on the back burner until they're more independent. This doesn't mean I cannot master my professional craft, but rather balance it with my major expression. There's a real art form to choosing the proper expression in any given moment, yet it need not be difficult. Indeed, it can be very organic if we remain conscious of our intentions and have been mindful to pass through each stage, releasing our attachment to it. While the rites of passage in our culture have been mostly forgotten, we have retained a few important ones and modified others. Graduation from high school or college is now seen as a rite of passage into adulthood. Marriage and having children into mother-father. Yet many couples either cannot or choose not to have children. This leaves their nurturing guidance skills unrecognized and unappreciated by their peers. With no children to grow into adulthood, they often find it difficult to pass into wise woman master craftsmen. By performing rite of passage ceremonies, this can be corrected, freeing us to access all the archetypal positions rather than restricting us to our expression based on experience. One example of ceremony to assist the passage from mother to wise woman is the changing of shawls ceremony. In this ceremony, the person getting ready to pass from mother to wise woman as their major expression invites her friends and family to a gathering to celebrate her passage. She provides 2 shawls, one to represent mother and one for wise woman. A circle is created by using a compass to establish the 4 directions: east, south, west, and north. The initiate sits in the center, facing north. One guest sits in each of the 4 directions to hold the energy for that direction. The rest sit around the circle in between the directions. The guest sitting in the west carries a shawl for mother, while the one sitting in the east holds the one for wise woman. This represents the sun setting on one archetype and the dawning of the next. First, the person with the shawl for mother spreads it over the initiate's shoulders before returning to her seat in the west of the circle. The initiate cites all the joys and sorrows of mother, giving gratitude for all the lessons and experiences of both. She closes by saying, "I now release mother and enter the empty." After a period of silence, the guest in the north removes the shawl and returns to her place in the circle. The guest sitting in the east gets up with the shawl for wise woman and spreads it over the shoulders of the initiate and returns to her seat. The initiate gives gratitude for her passage and speaks of what she hopes to accomplish and offer her family and community from her new role. She then states, "I now embrace wise woman." When she's done, the group states, "It is so." Afterward, it's always nice to give the initiate gifts and break bread, as in sharing refreshments. This ceremony can be adapted to any religion or culture. It is both powerful and profound. Ceremonies can be combined, such as a mother and daughter participating together. The daughter can have a coming-of-age ceremony upon her first menses, and the mother a changing of shawls ceremony at the same time. This combined ceremony helps grant the daughter a new, age-appropriate relationship with her mother. If there are still young children at home, the mother will return to the mother archetype when stewarding them, but will remember and embrace the wise woman archetype with her daughter that's come of age. This is not to say that the mother may not need to drop back into her mother role with her daughter from time to time. This is a process and needs to be treated as such. But their main relationship will be of maiden and wise woman. It's amazing the pressure that's relieved from relationships when these passages are observed and honored. These are only a couple of examples of many. I cover how to compose your own ceremonies for any group or occasion in the Stairway to Heaven episode entitled The Art of Ceremony. Each archetypal expression has its own unique frequency. By attending to the rites of passage and becoming conscious which expression serves the moment, we reduce drag, becoming much more efficient in all we do. This increases our frequency and propels us further into unity and enlightenment. These cycles of these archetypes also are overlording and characterize each of the ages. Currently, as we leave the frequency of the Piscean age and enter the higher frequency of the Aquarian, humanity is in the middle of a huge collective rites of passage. At this time, we have the opportunity to move from squabbling children to responsible adults. How we embrace this transition will determine the quality of our future. By embracing the rites of passage in our daily lives and supporting each other to do so, this larger transition will be greatly supported and better understood. Thank you for joining me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on the Stairway to Heaven, where we provide updates on the energetic currents facilitating our evolution into conscious, powerful co-creators. Until next time, may you be blessed on your sacred path to wholeness. We are here. The time is now.